Day 17. I am writing this because I do not know if I will survive much longer, and someone should know what happened here. Someone should know what we faced, what kept us trapped, what waited in the hallways and the streets and all the spaces we used to move through without a second thought. It started on a Sunday evening in November. I was in my apartment in Crestwood, a city of about 200,000 people, watching television and not really paying attention. It was around 8:30, the kind of quiet evening where nothing seems like it could possibly go wrong. Then the emergency alert system interrupted the broadcast. The familiar tone cut through the room, that harsh buzz that always makes your heart skip even when it is just a test. But this was not a test. The screen displayed the emergency banner, and a mechanical voice began reading the message. All residents must remain indoors until further notice. Do not open doors or windows. Do not attempt to leave your residence. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. No explanation, no specific threat mentioned, no estimate of how long this would last. Just the directive, repeated twice, and then the screen returned to normal programming as if nothing had happened. I assumed it was some kind of chemical spill or gas leak, maybe an industrial accident at one of the plants on the edge of the city. I checked my phone for news, scrolled through local sites and social media, looking for any information that might explain the alert. Nothing. Everyone had received the same message. No one knew why. I texted my parents, who live about 2 hours away. They had received an identical alert. I texted my sister Caroline, who lives in a different city entirely. Same alert, same instructions, same complete absence of explanation. The television returned to its regular broadcast for a few minutes, some comedy show I had already forgotten. And then the alert played again. Same message, same directive, same mechanical voice, telling us to stay inside without telling us why. I decided to follow the instructions. I had enough food for a few days. The water still worked, the electricity was on. I figured whatever was happening would be resolved by morning. These things always were. I went to bed around 11, thinking I would wake up to an all-clear announcement and a sheepish explanation from city officials about a false alarm or a contained situation. I woke up around 3 in the morning to sounds I could not identify. Not sirens, not traffic, not anything I had ever heard in all my years of living in this city. A low thrumming that seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating in my chest more than reaching my ears, like standing next to a massive engine, except there was no engine, just the empty night and that impossible sound. I went to my window and looked out at the street below. My apartment is on the 3rd floor, high enough to see a good stretch of the road and the buildings across the way. Everything looked normal. Empty streets, parked cars, streetlights casting their familiar orange glow. No movement, no obvious source for the sound. But the thrumming continued until just before dawn, when it faded as gradually as it had begun. Monday morning, I expected the all clear. Instead, the alert played again, unchanged, still offering no explanation. I called my workplace and got no answer. I called my parents and they told me they were still under the same instructions, still waiting, still confused. I told myself it would be resolved by Tuesday, by Wednesday at the latest. Surely someone would explain what was happening. No one ever did. Day 2 felt like a waiting game. I rationed my food carefully, assuming this would be over soon, but wanting to be prepared just in case. I kept checking my phone, refreshing news sites, scrolling through social media for any scrap of information. The posts were all the same. Confusion, fear, questions that no one could answer. Some people posted theories about government experiments, or terrorist attacks, or natural disasters. None of the theories made sense. None of them explained the complete absence of official information. I tried watching television, but the regular programming felt wrong somehow. Sitcoms and dramas playing as if the world had not changed, interrupted every few minutes by that same alert. I turned it off and sat in silence, listening to the sounds of my building, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the pipes, the distant murmur of other televisions playing the same alert in other apartments. By day 3, I started noticing changes outside. The streets were still empty, but things had moved. Cars that had been parked in certain spots were now in different positions, though I never saw them move. Trash cans were overturned, their contents scattered across sidewalks. A bicycle that had been chained to a rack near the entrance of my building was now lying in the middle of the street, its frame twisted in a way that suggested tremendous force. I never saw what caused these changes. They just appeared between one glance and the next, as if the world was rearranging itself when I was not looking. The nighttime sounds grew worse. The thrumming was joined by other noises, scraping like something heavy being dragged across pavement, clicking, rhythmic and fast, like many legs moving in unison. And voices. The voices were the worst part. They sounded human, or almost human, but the words they spoke made no sense. Strings of syllables that almost formed sentences, but never quite resolved into meaning. Like hearing a conversation in a language you do not speak, except the sounds were too familiar, too close to English, as if whatever was speaking knew our words, but did not understand how to use them. Day 4, the sounds came closer to my building. I heard the scraping right outside, heard something heavy moving across the parking lot below my window. I pressed myself against the wall, as far from the window as I could get, and listened as whatever it was circled the building. Testing doors, maybe, looking for a way in, looking for anyone foolish enough to break the rules. Day 5, I found scratches on my window, long, deep gouges in the glass, running from top to bottom in parallel lines. They had not been there before. Something had climbed up to my 3rd floor window during the night and dragged its claws or its fingers or whatever it had across the glass, testing my defenses, letting me know it was aware of me. I covered the window with a blanket after that. I could not bear to look at those scratches, could not bear to think about what had made them. I tried to communicate with my neighbors. I knocked on the wall of the apartment next to mine and heard knocking back. I pressed my ear against the wall and tried to speak, tried to hear if anyone was speaking back, but I could not make out words through the barrier. I slid a note under my door, asking if anyone was out there, asking if anyone knew what was happening. The note disappeared by morning. No response ever came. I do not know if my neighbors took it or if something else did. By day 6, my food supply was running low. I had been rationing from the start, but I was not prepared for a siege. I had maybe 2 days of meals left if I stretched them thin. The water still worked, the electricity still flowed, but the internet had become unreliable, cutting in and out with no pattern I could discern. The television showed nothing but the alert now. That same message playing on loop, every channel, every station. My phone could still send texts, but calls would not connect. I exchanged messages with Caroline, comparing our experiences. She was seeing the same things I was seeing. Empty streets, strange sounds, shapes moving at night. Whatever this was, it was not local. It was everywhere. Day 7, I saw one of them for the first time. I was standing at my window, peering around the edge of the blanket I had hung to cover it. I knew I should not look. I knew whatever was out there was not meant to be seen. But the not knowing was driving me mad, and some part of me needed to understand what we were hiding from. Movement caught my eye. Something darting between parked cars on the street below, moving from shadow to shadow, with a speed that seemed impossible for anything so large. I pressed closer to the glass, trying to see clearly. The shape paused in a pool of streetlight, and for one terrible moment, I saw it. It was large, much larger than a person, standing on legs that bent backward like a bird's. Its body was hunched, elongated, covered in something that might have been skin, or might have been something else entirely. Its arms, if you could call them arms, reached nearly to the ground, ending in hands that had too many fingers, each one tipped with something that glinted in the orange light. But the worst part was its head. It turned, slowly, as if sensing my attention, and I saw a face that was almost human. Almost, but stretched wrong, proportioned wrong, with a mouth that opened too wide, and eyes that reflected the streetlight like mirrors. It looked up at my window. It saw me. I stumbled backward, knocking into furniture, gasping for air. I heard a sound from outside, a clicking chirp that might have been curiosity or might have been hunger, and then the scraping sound as it moved closer to my building. I pressed myself into the corner of my bedroom, as far from the window as possible, and I did not move until morning. After that, I stopped looking outside at night. Day 8, Caroline texted me. "Are you okay? We are still inside. The alert keeps playing." I told her I was managing, which was not quite a lie, but not quite the truth either. We exchanged a few messages, the kind of communication that feels precious when you do not know if it will be your last. Day 9. I ate the last of my food. I sat on my couch and stared at my front door, thinking about the hallway beyond it. The alert had told us not to leave, not to open doors or windows, but I was going to starve if I stayed. My body was already weakening, that hollow feeling in my stomach growing more insistent with every passing hour. I listened at the door and heard nothing. I considered making a run for it, just down the hall to my neighbor's apartment, to see if they had food they could share. But every time I reached for the handle, I thought about the sounds at night, the shapes in the street, the voices that almost spoke words. I stayed inside. I drank water and tried to pretend it filled the emptiness. Day 10, something knocked on my door. 3 slow, heavy knocks that vibrated through the wood. Not the sound a human hand would make. Too solid, too deliberate, with a weight behind it that suggested something massive standing just on the other side of that thin barrier. I froze on my couch, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Then a voice muffled through the door. "Wesley, it is safe now. You can come out." The voice sounded almost like my friend Carter. Almost, but not quite. The cadence was wrong. The emphasis in strange places, like someone had learned to imitate Carter's voice without understanding how he actually spoke, like a recording being played by something that did not understand what the words meant. I did not answer. I did not move. I barely breathed. "Wesley, we have been looking for you. Everyone is outside now. It is safe." The knocking resumed. Those same 3 heavy impacts, over and over, patient and deliberate. The voice kept calling my name, kept insisting it was safe, kept using words that sounded right but felt wrong. Then it tried a different approach. "Wesley, please open the door. I am so hungry. I have not eaten in days. Please help me." The voice shifted, became more plaintive, more desperate. It sounded like a child now, a lost child begging for help. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to open the door, to help whoever was suffering on the other side. But I remembered the shape in the streetlight. I remembered the mouth that opened too wide, the eyes that reflected like mirrors. I remembered what these things could do. I stayed silent. I stayed still. I waited. After an hour, it stopped. I heard movement in the hallway, that scraping sound I had grown so familiar with, and then silence. I did not sleep that night. I sat with my back against the wall, watching the door, waiting for the knocking to resume. It never did, but I could not shake the feeling that something was still out there, still waiting, still listening for any sign that I might make a mistake. By day 12, I knew I had to make a choice. I was weak, barely able to stand for long periods, my body consuming itself in the absence of food. I could stay in my apartment and die slowly, or I could open my door and face whatever was waiting. I chose to open the door. I turned the lock as quietly as I could, gripped the handle, and pulled the door open just a few inches. The hallway looked normal, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, slightly worn carpet, familiar doors on either side. Everything appeared exactly as it had always been. But the smell was wrong. Something chemical and organic at the same time, like rot mixed with disinfectant. It hit me as soon as the door opened. That wrongness in the air that told me this place was no longer safe, even if it looked the same. I took one step into the hallway. Then I saw it. At the end of the hall, where the stairs led down to the lower floors, something waited. It was pressed against the ceiling, limbs splayed in directions that made no sense, its body defying gravity in a way that seemed impossible. Its head was turned at an angle that would have broken a human neck, twisted almost completely backward so it could watch me approach. It was watching me with eyes that reflected the fluorescent light like a cat's, except cats do not have bodies that large, do not have that many limbs, do not cling to ceilings like insects made of flesh and shadow. Its mouth was open slightly, and I could see rows of teeth that were too numerous, too sharp, too eager. It did not move. It just watched, waiting. For a moment, we stared at each other across the length of the hallway. I could feel its attention on me, could feel it evaluating me, deciding whether I was worth the effort. Its limbs flexed slightly, adjusting its grip on the ceiling, and I heard that clicking sound again, soft and patient. I backed into my apartment so slowly, I could feel each heartbeat as a separate moment of terror. I did not look away from it until the door was between us. I closed it. I locked it. I pressed my back against the wall and listened, my whole body shaking. Movement in the hallway. That scraping sound, moving past my door, pausing directly outside. I could hear it breathing now. A wet, heavy sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It knew I was there. It knew I had seen it, but it did not try to enter. The door held. Whatever rules governed these things, whatever logic they operated by, my closed door was enough to stop them. As long as I stayed inside, as long as I followed the instructions, I was safe. I understood then what the alert had really been telling us. Not about a chemical spill, not about a gas leak. The alert was about them, the things that waited in the hallways, on the streets, in all the spaces between our homes. The alert was keeping us alive by keeping us hidden, by keeping our doors closed and our presence concealed. As long as we stayed inside, we survived. The problem was that staying inside was killing me too, just more slowly. Day 15. I was barely conscious. I lay on my couch, too weak to move much, watching the television play that same alert over and over. I had stopped hoping for an explanation. I had stopped hoping for rescue. I just existed, moment to moment, waiting for whatever came next. Day 16. I heard voices in the hallway. Real voices this time. Human voices. Scared and desperate. Someone was trying to leave, trying to escape, unable to bear the waiting any longer. I heard a woman calling out, asking if anyone was there, her voice cracking with fear and determination. She must have run out of food, like me, must have decided that certain death inside was worse than probable death outside. I wanted to warn her, wanted to scream at her to go back inside, but my voice would not cooperate. My throat was dry, my body too weak to produce more than a whisper. I could only listen as her footsteps moved down the hallway, confident at first, then slower, then stopping. I heard her gasp, a sharp intake of breath, the sound of someone seeing something that should not exist. I heard her start to scream, and then I heard something I cannot describe, a wet and heavy sound that ended the scream mid-note, at a sound of impact, of tearing, of something being dragged across the floor. Then silence, complete and terrible, broken only by that clicking chirp I had heard so many times before. The sound of satisfaction, the sound of hunger being fed. I pressed my hands over my ears and wept silently, grieving for a stranger I had never met, who had made the same choice I was considering and paid the price for it. Day 17. My phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. I'm going to try to leave. I cannot stay anymore. I love you. I stared at the message, my heart breaking, even as my fingers fumbled with the screen. I tried to type a response, tried to tell her to stay inside, but my hands would not cooperate. kept hitting wrong keys, my body too weak and my mind too fuzzy. Finally, I managed to send, "Stay inside, please." No response came back. I do not know if she received it. I do not know if she listened. I do not know if my sister is alive or if she walked out into whatever has claimed our world. If she became another victim of the things that wait in the spaces we used to move through freely. That evening, something changed. The alert on the television cut off mid-sentence, the mechanical voice stopping between one word and the next. Static filled the screen for a moment. Then it went black. The lights in my apartment flickered once, twice, then stabilized. The building was quiet, quieter than it had been since this started. No thrumming, no scraping, no clicking of legs or voices that almost spoke words. Just silence, heavy and complete. I do not know what it means. I do not know if the things are gone or if they are simply waiting, if the danger has passed, or if this is some new phase of whatever nightmare has descended on our world. But I know I cannot stay here any longer. I'm going to die if I do not find food. My body has reached its limit. I can feel myself fading, my thoughts growing fuzzy, my grip on consciousness loosening with every passing hour. The alert has stopped. Maybe that means it is safe now. Maybe that means the opposite. There is only one way to find out. I drag myself to my feet, using the wall for support. Every step is agony, my muscles screaming in protest, my vision swimming. I reach my door, put my hand on the lock, think about the thing I saw pressed against the ceiling, watching me with those reflective eyes. I think about the woman's scream on day 16. I think about Caroline's text and my unanswered reply. I think about all the people in this building, in this city, in all the cities where the same alert played and the same things came. I open the door. The hallway is empty. The lights are on, buzzing softly. The carpet is stained with something dark near the end of the hall. Something I do not look at too closely. But nothing waits for me. Nothing clings to the ceiling. Nothing calls my name in a voice that almost sounds familiar. I take a step, then another. The building is silent. Every apartment door closed. I do not know if anyone else is left. I do not know if I am the last one. I reach the front entrance and push through the door. The outside world is grey with dawn, cool air hitting my face for the first time in 17 days. The streets are empty, cars sitting where they have sat since this began. No people, no movement, no sound, but no things either. At least none that I can see. Just emptiness, vast and complete. A city holding its breath. I stand on the sidewalk and look at a world that has been fundamentally changed. I do not know what happened. I do not know where everyone went. I do not know if the things are gone or just hiding, waiting for night to fall, waiting for the next opportunity to hunt. The morning light feels thin, fragile, as if it might give way at any moment to the darkness where the things live. I look up and down the street, searching for any sign of life, any indication that I am not the last person left in this city. Nothing moves. No cars, no people, no animals. Even the birds are silent. The sky empty of anything except grey clouds that promise nothing. I wonder how many people followed the rules, stayed inside, survived. I wonder how many are still in their apartments right now, afraid to open their doors, not knowing that the alert has stopped. I wonder if I should go back inside my building and knock on doors, try to find other survivors. But I am too weak. I need food. I need water that is not from a tap that might stop working at any moment. I need to find supplies before I collapse, before my body gives out completely. I only know that I survived 17 days by following the rules, by staying inside, staying quiet, staying hidden. And now the rules have changed. The alert has stopped. The choice is mine. I start walking, one foot in front of the other, toward wherever the empty streets will take me, toward food, toward water, toward answers I may never find. Behind me, my apartment building stands silent, full of closed doors and people who may or may not still be alive. Around me, the city waits, and somewhere in the shadows, in the spaces the morning light has not yet reached, something watches me go. Something that has been waiting for 17 days. Something that is very, very patient. I do not look back. I just keep walking. And I try not to think about what happens when the sun goes down.